From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Life in a war zone. One farmer in Ukraine shares his story as he tries to continue to work as bombs fly overhead. Watching and waiting.
So be ready for prices at any moment to fall lower.
What farmers need to keep an eye on with markets reaching highs not seen in years. As the conflict escalates between Russia and Ukraine, the latest on impacts around the world and here at home.
And so that's a big risk too that I see potentially.
Right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is being felt around the world and here at home, with concerns growing about whether farmers in Ukraine will even be able to plant a crop this year, and the impact that can have on world hunger and U.S. ag demand and prices. Now, Ukraine, a big part of President Biden's first State of the Union speech last night. Here are some of the key things we're watching right now. The European benchmark for milling wheat setting a new all-time high. 95% of Ukraine's wheat exports went to Asia or Africa last year, areas that have issues when it comes to food security. Here in the U.S., wheat prices climbing to a 14-year high yesterday, soybeans moving towards $17, joining wheat amid concerns about possible disruptions to the global vegetable oil supply chain. Ukraine is the world's largest producer and exporter of sunflower seeds and sunflower oil, a competitor to soybean oil. As for corn, it also surged even higher on what the invasion will mean for global grain trade. Russia and Ukraine, they account for nearly 1/5 of world corn exports, and oil moving above $100 a barrel. The International Energy Agency announcing all 31 member countries agreeing to release 60 million barrels of oil from their strategic reserves, an effort to show there would be no shortfall in supplies. Now, half of the release will come from the U.S. Russia is the world's third largest oil producer. Now, all of this, along with a host of rumors spiking the markets Tuesday.
Definitely seeing some fear still in the marketplace in terms of what is going to actually transpire for Russia, Ukraine, and what it means for the global marketplace in terms of grain production, grain demand. And then there was rumors that Russia, Ukraine would not be exporting sunflower oil. So that got palm oil up, that got soybean prices up. Then rumors came in that China bought 10 cargoes of U.S. corn. Also rumors that will the Ukraine and Russian situation, are they going to be able to access seed? And will they be able to do production this year? So all of that has got the marketplace up dramatically. And we're back to the big question marks about where is production now? Where will be production in the future be? And also NOAA came out today with their summer weather forecast, hot and dry. So the market is on edge. We are up near some very significant price highs for corn and soybeans and wheat. And remember, the funds have the ability now to trade and hold more contracts. So the volatility is going to continue.
The situation in Ukraine is creating uncertainty about fertilizer production as well. AgDay talked with several ag retailers who say many farmers who have been on the fence about locking in fertilizer for spring did so late last week. Joss Linville of Stone X Group saying if fertilizer production ramped up today, which is unlikely, it wouldn't arrive in time for spring.
Unfortunately, the window's closing too quickly. When you start looking, we need to bring more imports. We got to increase the supply, and we got to bring that from overseas. But unfortunately, if you had a ship ready to roll today from the Middle East, for example, on urea, you're talking 30-day sail time to get it to the Gulf. Then you've got to unload into barges, and you've probably got at least another 30 to 45 days to get that up the river system, into the terminal, and out to the farm. By the time you start talking those type of logistics, that's May. So it's getting to be very, very late, and it looks like corn is going to continue to stay high on the acres. Demand is going to stay high, and we're going to stay on the snug side. Never say never, right? But it's starting to look like we're going to see it be firm all the way through at least the first half of spring.
And while higher prices for corn, soybeans, and wheat may be good news for some farmers, it's impacting livestock producers' bottom lines when it comes to feed costs. But that's not the only risk facing producers and consumers alike.
I think another big risk, maybe not in the immediate term here, is do these high prices, this inflationary push, or higher interest rates, does that slow the economy down. I guess now you can add to that these sanctions that we're putting on economically to Russia. Does that cause kind of a hangover in the world economy? And so that's a big risk too, that I see potentially. Now that may be a few months to a year down the road, but on the backside of this inflation, if that crushes the economy, crushes the consumer, you have a demand issue on that as well. Potentially at the same time that we have these high feed costs. So I think hand in hand, both of those kind of go together. And I think that's the biggest risk livestock producers face here over the next, say 6 months to a year.
Amid all of this, as farmers prepare to lock in crop insurance for the season, the Risk Management Agency releasing the final numbers, and as expected, they're pretty high. Corn coming in at $5.90 a bushel. That's $1.05 over last year and the highest level since 2011. Soybeans are set at $14.33, up $2.46 from last year. Spring wheat is at a record at $9.19, up 41% from last year. Lots of moisture is streaming in from the west, and that could help put a dent in the drought out in several areas. Meteorologist Matt Yurisovic has an update. Matt?
Yeah, Clinton, that's right. We are going to see a lot more moisture out there in the west, especially over the next 5 or so days. Taking a look at our future track model, which is going to show you still looking at that atmospheric river pushing a lot of moisture into the west as we head through the day on Wednesday. But then it kind of breaks up on Thursday. Still looking at a couple of upper lows that are going to spin through the area into the weekend, bringing rain and higher elevation snow all throughout the west. And if we look here at our precipitation, you're going to see upwards of 2-3 inches of rain. And again, some of this farther inland is going to be in the form of snow. Over a ½ inch of liquid equivalent, could be over a foot of snow in some of the higher elevations there in the Rockies. And this will likely put a dent in some of those drought conditions. Not resolve all of it, but we could see some improvements there. And a unique start to the morning in Penn Yan, New York. David Christensen sharing this picture of a sundog he caught on camera. Thanks for sharing. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The latest Purdue CME Group Ag Economy Barometer shows farmers were more optimistic about the future. The survey conducted just before Russia invaded Ukraine. The February barometer rose 6 points to 125. That matches sentiments from December. The index of future expectations helping push the overall reading higher, climbing to its highest mark since August of last year.
The Farm Financial Performance Index this month was unchanged from last month, still down substantially compared to where it was in December, as producers continue to expect 2022 to give a weaker financial performance for their farms than they saw in 2021.
Supply chains also continuing to be a problem. 30% of crop producers in the survey say they've had some difficulty purchasing inputs for this year. Corn and soybean growers say the biggest challenges are getting herbicides, fertilizer, and farm machinery parts. Markets are volatile right now, so what should farmers be keeping an eye on? More of my conversation with Naomi Bloom next. And later, living in a war zone, a report from a farmer living in Ukraine. We're joined today by Naomi Bloom with Total Farm Marketing. Naomi, as we look at these markets, and obviously we've seen extreme volatility to the upside to start this week, but we've also seen markets trade significantly lower over a day or two. What do farmers and those in production need to be thinking about is how to handle this or manage it at all?
Well, it's a very important and timely question, especially as producers are really trying to decide what they're going to be planting in the spring with these recent price actions. I've heard little bits of conversations of, well, I might switch a few acres to A, B, C, or D. But ultimately, be aware of the value in front of you. Make sure you understand your cost of production. We're in a historic time where we have the 9 commodities with tight ending stocks, and that's propelling prices higher, along with this war that's happening in Russia, Ukraine, along with the global economy kind of in a little bit of a tailspin and not sure what it's going to be doing. So be ready for prices at any moment to fall lower in case of some unexpected outside market reaction, because the reality, when you stop and look at where prices are, we are up near historical highs for the corn market, for the soybean market, for the wheat market. And the reality for prices to go higher from here, you're going to need more bad weather in South America. You're going to need more bad weather here this spring and summer in the United States. You're going to need the funds to come in and stay as buyers and keep this crude oil prices above $100 a barrel. So you're asking a lot for the market to be able to go higher from here. Is it possible? It is, but also think of the value that's in front of you. And especially when you're talking about new crop sales, if you're looking at forward contracting, you are able to protect tremendous value right now. So this is a marketplace where you're wanting to be aware of the upside possibilities, but you want to also protect downside bushels. And please know that that's not being wishy-washy with your marketing. You are protecting value, but also looking at potential risk and reward that could come ahead. So this is historic, it's unprecedented, it's only the beginning of March, and usually these kind of prices that we have don't come until summertime. So there's a lot that can come ahead. So be prepared for anything and manage your risk.
Well said. Appreciate it. Sage advice. Thank you so much for being here, Naomi. Really appreciate it. We'll be back with more AgDay coming up in just a minute.
To discuss marketing strategies, call 800-334-9779. AgDay is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator, it's not just any closing wheel. Reach your yield potential. Pre-order by March 31st with coupon code AgDay for $2 shipping per wheel. AgDay weather is brought to you by Zoetis. Even though calves don't wait for perfect weather to arrive, you can count on Zoetis to be there. Share a picture of your newest calf and you could win a calving season survival kit. Enter now at calvingseason.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here. And Matt, you know, we keep talking about waiting for winter to end, and maybe we're starting to see a little of that.
Yeah, we're getting into March now. It's kind of that in-between period, but we've got some warmth in the middle of the country, but more moisture coming into the west. And the chillier air back there in the Pacific Northwest. That comes along with the chances for precipitation in the form of rain and even some mountain snow. And you can see temperatures in the 50s, places like Seattle and Portland later on this afternoon. But look at the middle of the country, big ridge out there, nearing 80 degrees in Tulsa, staying in the mid to upper 70s across most of Texas. Now, as we head through the overnight, yes, it gets chillier, but stays relatively mild across much of the country, except up here in the Rockies. Places like Seattle and Portland down into the upper 30s. Carson City sitting at 25 degrees there. And by tomorrow, again, you really start to see the warmth come up here in the middle of the country. 80 degrees in Tulsa and Dallas. And we're staying in the 40s and 50s where we've got a lot of moisture moving in there to the west. And look at Phoenix, 88 degrees and sitting in the lower 80s in Florida as well. Meanwhile, cold air locked up in the north. So here's the look at the map. And most of the lower 48 going to be under high pressure. That's going to keep the sunshine out. Sky's clear. We're going to be watching for not a ton going on, at least through the next 48 hours, but we will see a chance for a couple of snow showers, maybe some rain showers towards St. Louis and even north of Cincinnati there as we head through Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning. A little bit of a clipper system there, but other than that, most of the action going on back there in the west. Northern Rockies back towards the Pacific Northwest. All that moisture coming in with that atmospheric river, and you're going to see a lot of that, especially in the form of snow on parts of Montana. But once we get towards the weekend, that's when that ridge breaks down and all that precipitation starts to move inland. As you can see right here, here comes that ridge breaking down. All that moisture moves into parts of the area that we really need some, and then more breaking out across the Great Lakes, Midwest, and parts of the Mid-South as well. Now back in the Northwest and back towards the Four Corners region, we're going to see a lot of higher elevation snow associated with this as well, and that is going to be a welcome sight to a lot of people that are under some drought conditions and have been for quite some time now. And again, it's warm through the middle of the country due to the ridge, but here comes that dip in the jet stream, bringing in some much needed moisture back to the west. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Green Bay, Wisconsin, rain and snow showers likely, a high of 36 degrees. Clovis, New Mexico, sunny and warm, a high of 73. And Bozeman, Montana, mild with rain showers likely, a high of 51.
AgDay is brought to you by Authority Supreme Herbicide from FMC. Learn more at ag.fmc.com.
Cover crops may hold the key to fighting weeds, even during the growing season. Damon Jones of the Georgia Farm Monitor shows us research being done that could help you grow more of your own nitrogen.
It's officially the off-season for Georgia's staple row crops like corn, cotton, and peanuts. However, there is still plenty of work to be done in the fields as growers are encouraged to plant cover crops in order to both maintain the soil quality and manage weeds until planting season rolls around.
So a big benefit that we're seeing out here actually is that we're reducing the amount of weed seeds that actually germinate. And so what happens is we're producing all this biomass and we're seeing, I would say probably about 75% reduction in the number of actual plants that are germinating compared to, say, a bare ground treatment where there's no cover crops at all.
So erosion's a big thing, especially in a lot of places. We have highly erodible soils here in Georgia. And so keeping the ground cover, keeping that soil from disappearing. And we've also noticed that we have a slight increase numerically from increased carbon. We've got some ongoing research looking into organic matter increases as affected by these cover crops. But one of the things with cover crops, it does take time to see these benefits. You're not going to plant the cover crop and see it happen tomorrow.
While these cover crops, typically cereal rye and crimson clover being the most common, are planted opposite the cash crops during the fall and winter, researchers are working on a living mulch that is grown in tandem with the other row crops. And one of the benefits they've seen should be very interesting to the grower, especially considering the high cost of fertilizer.
What the living mulch is you actually plant it and it grows at the same time as the cash crop. And so the living mulch that we selected is a Durana white clover. And so it creates a decent amount of biomass, not what you would see with cereal rye, but it also fixes its own nitrogen. And so with commodity prices the way they are and the cost of inputs going up, being able to basically grow your own nitrogen is a huge benefit.
However, living mulch isn't ideal for every grower as there is a big investment in both time and water needed for it to succeed.
You need to have the right system setups. It's not for everybody. Moisture, so I also have soil moisture probes, as you can see with these boxes out behind here. So we're actually measuring soil moisture 365 days a year at 10 and 30 centimeters. And so what we're doing is we're trying to keep an eye on what's the soil moisture and how it's affected by the different cover crops, just to kind of get a baseline of what's going on out here. So soil moisture is an important thing to aspect when you're trying to grow, because think about it, you have living mulch growing year round, you have 2 plants, you have higher moisture requirements.
So while cover crops might often be overlooked, it's just another way farmers can improve their bottom line.
My approach to cover crops is that it's another tool in the toolbox.
Reporting from Oconee County, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
Our thanks to the Georgia Farm Monitor for sharing that story with us. Now, what's it like being a farmer right now in Ukraine? We'll hear from one living there and why what's happening may affect us all in the months ahead. Next. What's it like to be a farmer in Ukraine right now? We're learning a little bit more after a farmer sent a letter to the Global Farmer Network. His name is Cornelius Hunziga. He farms in central Ukraine where he grows several crops including onions, carrots, wheat, barley, corn, and sunflowers. He says, quote, "When I became a farmer, I knew that I'd have to wage a figurative war on the traditional foes of food production, pests, weeds, and disease. I didn't expect to find myself in an actual war zone with a lethal enemy." He goes on to say that his wife and children have fled the farm, seeking safety near the border with Romania, and he stayed behind. In talking about the upcoming planting season, he says, quote, "I don't know if any of this will be possible this year. I don't know what the next hour holds for us, let alone tomorrow or next week or next month. I'm already wondering how we'll feed our cows. We have food on hand, but we may have to weaken our feed ratio so that our supplies last longer. This will lower our output." He's concerned as well about the humanitarian crisis as people escape the destruction, adding, quote, "Nobody in Ukraine ever should starve. We are an agricultural breadbasket." He adds, "If we drop out of the global market, food prices will rise everywhere. Price inflation is already hurting ordinary consumers around the world, but now it will worsen. This means that Russia's unprovoked war on Ukraine is not only Ukraine's problem, it's a threat to everyone on the planet. Russia has attacked us all. He closes with, quote, "Will you stand with Ukraine in our moment of need?" You can read his full letter on agweb.com. A glimpse into one farmer's world right now. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a good day.